This leads me to sort of one of my final questions around weight loss drugs, because we're seeing a lot of these GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy and all of this. And I have some thoughts on it. It's a bit nuanced. I would love for you to comment on why or why not these drugs may be a good, how can we say, gateway? Like gateway drug? Could they be a gateway drug to a healthier life? Like giving people some, like, tell me what you think about Ozempic.
I have some
like,
definite opinions on all
yeah,
of this.
yeah.
First of all, I think we're asking the wrong question. And to me, what's fascinating about these drugs is, okay, so why are they working so well? What's going on here? What is the lesson from this? Because part of it's satiety, but part of it's insulin sensitivity, part of it's in the small intestine, part of it's in the brain. What's going on? And can we do this without the drug, or is the drug needed? If you've now got 80% of the population overweight or obese, and you have something that can help move the needle when nothing else has, I think it's mean to not offer it. Okay.
Yeah.
However, what are the big problems that we see with the drugs? There's two things, and and then I'm going to tell you about some non-drug alternatives that work amazingly well, which are so exciting. The first one is you lose muscle mass. Well, any poorly designed diet is going to cause muscle mass loss. So when you look at it, you go, why are they losing muscle mass? Well, because they're insulin resistant, and then they're not focusing on protein and resistance training. So anytime you put someone on a caloric restriction without optimal protein and resistance training, you're going to lose 25 to 30% of muscle. We know that. So it's not the drug, it's the diet and exercise problem. So that's the first part of it. And the second part is that, well, you'll need to be on it for life. Well, actually, there's some interesting stuff coming out that says otherwise. And there's other things you can do. I think we're using them wrong. I love what Dr. Tina Moore's been teaching about microdosing this. I started using it with my son because of the neuroregenerative. There's cardioregenerative, neuroregenerative, kidney regenerative. There's stuff with osteoarthritis, osteoporosis. There's a lot
Well,
more.
because we make GLP-1. This is an
Yes.
this is an endogenous compound that we have the capacity to make as well. Yeah.
Right. So the question is, why are we not making, where is this disconnect coming from? I would argue it's ultra processed foods that are built to be low protein, to trigger the protein leverage hypothesis, to make you overeat, right? That is creating this problem. GLP-1 raises when you eat, and especially from protein and fiber. But now we've really trashed our gut microbiome. We've lost the satiety signaling due to the ultra processed foods. So what if, like, I think the first line of defense before the drug would be to try two things that I'm amazed these things are not like more widespread right now, especially because they cost a fraction of what the medication costs. One of them is RX sugar, allulose. Allulose raises GLP-1. Now, you have to do about 0.1 to 0.4 grams per kilogram of body weight. So it's about 10 to 15 grams of allulose before a meal. And actually, it will drop your blood sugar in response to the meal. Like Dom D'Agostino did a little thing using one of RX Sugar Swelty snacks before a meal. You can do that, eat a candy bar, drop your blood sugar. Actually, it wasn't him. It was another guy was showing, he was a diabetic, taking Swelty snacks, ate a candy bar, showed how it dropped blood sugar, because allulose will cause a little insulin release, just like GLP-1 will, right? Which people, like, you want insulin to get released in response to food to drive nutrients into cells and then come back down. So that's the first one, is allulose. And I've actually been using allulose syrup. So my problem is I don't really like sweet. Now, it's not super sweet. Allulose is a rare sugar. It doesn't raise insulin, doesn't raise blood sugar. It actually lowers blood sugar and raises GLP-1. But I've been using it in the morning. I take this syrup and pour it onto either my smoothie or Greek style yogurt to raise GLP-1. The other thing that you can do is use something called CaloCurb. New Zealand started studying this hops formula 10 years ago. They've invested $30 million in it, and it will raise GLP-1 for like 4 hours. And they are using it to titrate people off the drug. Now, in my perfect world, we would start someone with replacing all sweeteners with allulose, right? And start using that before the meal. There's a little Swelty stick, this flavor thing that you can have about 10 grams before a meal. You take 2 CaloCurbs before a meal and see if that can do enough for you. And I think for a lot of people, it probably could. And if that wasn't enough, then start low dose, microdosing of the injection with good protein quality and fiber and resistance training. And then be able to cycle back off of it or cycle it down to maybe every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. But I look at it and go, all right, so let's say in the worst case, you found out you needed to use this drug. You are obese, you're 50 pounds overweight, you're insulin resistant. You are now have high risk factor. So your VO2 is low. You can't max is low. You can't really move much. You've got osteoarthritis. You've got a lot of inflammation, high cardiovascular risk factors, et cetera. And nothing's working. You're weight loss resistant, blah, blah, blah. You use Ozempic or Mounjaro, and you finally are able to get the weight off. You're on a protein optimized diet with resistance training. You actually maintain muscles, you lose fat. And I know enough people who've done this, so I can tell you, you can do it. And you get close to where you want to be. You get down to cycling that drug. So you're doing a fraction of what you need, microdosing it every other week. That helps you get to a place where you can maintain your weight, and you have to use that for life. I would argue you're better off. I'd argue, so what? You'd either use that drug for life, or you're going to be on blood pressure, cholesterol, like all these other medications. Which is worse? One, you just improved your metabolic health, became insulin sensitive, lost that body fat, held onto or put on muscle. You can move now. You're active. You're athletic. You've actually had some benefits from the drug. If you look at the papers that Tina Moore has them on her site about the improvements in cardiovascular health, brain health. That's why we're using it for my son, the neurodegenerative. Or you're on these other medications for life that are just band-aiding all the problems that you have. They haven't fixed anything. So I can't understand the argument. I can't understand all the shaming and hate and all the stuff around this drug. I do not get it. What am I missing?
No, I'm in a complete agreement with you. And I think that sometimes you need just a quick win. Like you just need to see a sign, that something is working, which is, I've always said the diet and the interventions that you follow when you're metabolically unhealthy or you're sick is not going to be the same thing that you
Right.
follow when you're healthy. So get on if you need it. Some of the protocols that you've outlined, I think, are fantastic. It's part of the reason, Love Dom and his wife Chilla. This is part of the reason why I like the ketogenic diet. It's going to help with improving insulin sensitivity initially, and it gives you a quick win. You drop the weight really quickly.
Right.
And then
great
it's a big motivator. You get this dopamine hit, and you're like, all right, I'm in. Like, I'm going to commit. And sometimes it's that psychological part of trying to rework your body composition. Like we've all heard, like, you got to do this, and here's the zone 2, and here's the resistance train. Like we're hearing all of these messages, but it's the buy-in. It's the buy-in that I think that people, well, what if it doesn't work for me? But if you see it working, you're going to be the likelihood of you following through is much higher. Yeah.
Doing this for 40 years, I've worked with a lot of obese and morbidly obese people. And, there's this whole idea out there that they're, undisciplined and I'm like, I couldn't see anything further than the truth. But you have someone who's metabolically disadvantaged at this moment, and you have something that can help them get out of the metabolic hole. Why wouldn't you use that tool?
Yeah.
Responsibly?
Beautifully said.